Welcome back to part 3. If you're just joining us, pause the video here and check out parts 1 and 2. I will include links in the description below as well as the YouTube card that pops up on the screen. For part 3, let's dive right in. We're going to do a screen fade, which is a nice transition between each scene or each level. To do this, we're going to build a fade out and a fade in, and then we'll do that on all of our scenes. The first thing we want to do is click here to add a new object, sprite, add an animation, create with Pascal. We're just going to leave that as black, use the paint bucket and fill that in. Default size is fine, and we're going to just call this fade. Click save on this, and let's name it fade up here as well. Go to the behaviors tab, add a behavior, and we want the tween behavior. So if you start typing tween, it'll automatically come up. Just click it when it does, then click apply. Let's drag our new fade object into our scene, and we can place it high outside the preview window because we'll set the position and the size using an event. I find it easier to use an event for certain objects because it makes it easier to make modifications when you don't have a cluttered scene. Down here, let's click add a new layer, and this layer we're going to call fade, and we want this to be at the top. This ensures that you don't introduce a bug because everything else will be hidden below that fade layer when it becomes visible. Now click on the object again, and let's add that to the fade layer. So that should do it for our prep. Let's go ahead and click on the Events tab. Somewhere at the top, below background, above player, this is just where I'm going to put it. You can nest it anywhere you like. Let's add a new group, and we're going to call this fade. Click on that object. Let's add our first event and nest that event under fade so that we can collapse that if we wanted to. All right, so the first thing we need is at the beginning of the scene, so you can copy this one up here and paste it, or you can dive in and find that. We're going to, for our fade object, change the position. So we're going to change the position for X and Y, both 0. Click OK on that. Before we add change of size, let's take a look at our window size. Remember, it's 1350 by 768. So let's add a new action for our fade. And we want to change the size. The width is 1350 and the height was 768. Click OK on that. So just to confirm that that would work, we open our window and everything's black. That's what we want. And then one last at the beginning of this scene, we want the fade. We want to tween the opacity. And we're going to call this fade in. Don't forget it has to be in double quotes. And to opacity is I want it to be, if you notice up here, 0 is transparent and 255 would be completely dark. I'm going to use linear just because I like the way it looks. For the duration, let's set that to 700 and see how that looks. Click OK on this. So we want to come down here to checkpoint flag. I'm going to add a new event down here. So let's click there, click add a new event. I'm going to drag this down. Now I want to add a new action up here, and I want to add our fade, and we want to tween the opacity. We're going to call this one fade out. The to opacity in this case is going to be 255 because we want to go from not seeing it to seeing it completely. Linear still, and that 700 will do. I also want a trigger once here. And down here for the condition, we want to go to our fade object. When the tween has finished playing, and the tween in this case is fade out, click OK on that. Then we're going to change the scene to So to test this, just to make testing a tiny bit easier, fruit on the scene, I'm just going to change this to 19, and then I'll have to change that back quickly after this playtest. The fade in looks good. I want to test the fade out. That looks good. All right, so both of those are working very well. Let's go ahead and change this back to just 1 so that we don't forget and introduce that bug. Go ahead and copy that event so that it's in your clipboard, and then come up to the player health section. We're going to click the last event just so we're in the right place, and then add a new event. Drag down the change to scene, then paste in the tween event. Now we're going to add a new condition and find our fade. And then when tween has finished playing, in this case, choose the fade out, and then we'll just rename that. We'll call this fade out lost. And then we'll rename this one as fade out lost. I'm only renaming it so that there's no confusion of which tween would be finishing. We should need a trigger once. The trigger once would have to be below our if statement. Let's go ahead and test that. Get some points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Game over, lost. Perfect. You want to make sure that your trigger once is below this nested if group. Okay, so just make sure it's down there. And yeah, so if we do a game 1, which we will do in the future, we'll have to just add that logic as well. All right, save your project. Next, we're going to download some fonts for our game. I will include the link to this URL in the description below. Click here on fonts, select commercial use. You can type your own text, and you can even change the color, which is handy, but it's only handy if you're planning on using the one-off copy-paste feature. When you download the entire font set, it'll default to black, so whatever color you choose here is just for the one-off that you copy-paste. We're just going to scroll down a little bit. I like this super funky. I'm going to click into it to see some more details. This button here, save your image, will let you either copy it to the clipboard, which is handy if you're trying to copy paste it to like a Word doc or a presentation, or as it says here, Google Docs, whatever. You can even copy paste it into Pascal and create a custom image. Alternatively, you could save the image here, or if you're using API, you can copy that link here. We're not going to be doing any of that for this current project. The thing to note here when you come into the details is that it's free for personal and commercial use. Commercial use is important if you plan on selling your game. And for me personally, I like to use the commercial use just so I don't accidentally violate any licensing. I'm going to click here, and I just want to download the data file. Then we'll navigate back to gDevelop. Back in our project, go ahead and double click on the score. Select choose a font, choose a file, navigate to where you downloaded your new font, double click. That's going to bring it into your project. And now I want to also do one more thing, and I want to use a different color so it's more in line with the game. And so I'm grabbing that color real quick. You can do this part or skip it. But really, I'm just going into the angry pig and grabbing the green hex value. Then canceling that, I'm going to go back into my font, change this color, pop in this hex value. We click apply on this now, and we take a look in our scene. You can see it's a tiny bit pixelated around the edges. To fix that, what I'm going to do is go back into my score text, click on effects, add a 2D effect, and the effect that I want is indeed outlined, but I want to change the outline from white to black, and click apply on that. I did like white as well, but black I thought just looked a little bit nicer. The pixelated font appears to be a known issue with gDevelop, so I wasted a little bit of time messing around with this and just kind of looking into it, but I felt like the outline was a nice compromise to make the font look less pixelated. I did also play around with bitmap text, and we'll use that later in the game, but it's not necessary for the score. Next, I want to work on a level complete splash screen so that when the player completes the level, after the level fades before it goes to the next level, it'll display this splash screen saying level complete. It's kind of fun, I feel like, so I wanted to figure out how to incorporate it into my game, and we're going to do it here. So I'm going to use GIMP, which is an open source image manipulation program. It has a very great community base, and I enjoy using it, but you can use any program that you like to do something similar. So if you're using GIMP, let's go up here to File, New. We're going to create a new image layer. Set the image width to 600 and the height to 400. Click on this Advanced Options and make sure that this fill width is set to transparency. Leave the rest as default and click OK. You can hit 2 on the keyboard just to bring that up. You notice here that the zoom level came up to 200% when I did that. Keyboard shortcut 1 brings it back down to 100%, normal, no zoom, and that works up to 5 in GIMP. If you haven't already installed the super funky font or whichever font you're using in your game, it's best to do that prior to opening GIMP so that it's available when you're ready to use it. I've already installed it. It's as simple as double clicking and installing when installing in Windows. And for the other operating systems, just follow the install instructions. Click here on the text tool, and I want to use a different color. So I'm going to use a nice blue, I think, and click OK on that. That way I have the blue and the white. So now that we have that, we see our font is set to super funky. I'm just going to create a nice little text box here and then start typing level complete. You don't have to do this step, it's just so you can see on the screen. I'm going to change the background from this transparency to black so that you can see this next step. I want that white for later. Make sure that you're on the level complete. Let's click B on the keyboard, or you can come up here to this paths tool, make a couple of points, and this is why I needed the black background so that you can see these points. And then I'm just going to pull up the edges a tiny bit, and you have to be pretty much on the line for this part to work, otherwise it will not look right. Once you have something that you like, right click on level complete, click new layer, we'll call it curve, make sure the transparency was selected, and then right click on the level complete again, and we want text along path. That looks really good. So what we can do is come back to our curve layer now. These dots will go away in a second. Don't worry about those for now, but we want to use this fill path. Click here on solid color and fill, making sure that the color in this top box is the color that you want it to fill. I can hide my background and my level complete original text now. We can also come to the paths tab, deselect the view for this path. That will get rid of that outline as well. So what I want to do now is add some outline to my text. Now that we have a nice curve, I want to right click on the curve, select this alpha to selection, use keyboard shortcut Control and X to cut that, come up here to select, use grow. We want to grow it by 5 pixels. Swap this color so that the white is in the foreground, and then I want to use the paint bucket tool to fill that in, and then Control V to paste that text back on top. You can click this create a new layer, and then we can merge this down so that those 2 layers stay together. I also want to delete my 2 unused layers. And then I want to come up to the image menu and I want to crop to content. So that'll give us a nice level complete that is curved that we can use as part of our splash screen. Do File, Export As. I'm going to name this level complete curved. I'm going to save it to my desktop just so I have it when I need it, and click on this export. That's going to bring up another menu. Leave everything as default and just click export on that. And that is it for our curved text. Next, we're going to bring in our level complete curved text that we created earlier. Click here to add a new object, sprite, add an animation, add a sprite, navigate to where you saved your image, double click to bring it in, click OK. We're going to rename this as level complete, and we can use the word text just so we know. And I want to do one more thing before we get out of this window. Let's go ahead and edit the points, and I want this origin point to be in line with the center point, or at least pretty darn close. Let's click on the Behaviors tab, add a behavior, start typing the word tween, click on tween, then click Apply. Now let's go to the Events tab, scroll down till we get to the checkpoint flag section. Let's click on this last event just to get us in position, then add a new event. Drag down, change the scene. Let's create a new action, and for our level complete text, we want to create an object. The exposition, because we're using a custom window size and a custom resolution, what I want to use is something that I know is stable, and that stable item is our level 1 tile map. So we're going to use the width of that tile map divided by 2, which is normally what you would do for the scene window width, but in this case it didn't work, so this is my workaround. For my Y position, I want it to be pretty low on the screen, so I'm just going to use something like 422, and we want to be on the fade layer. Click OK on that. We want to add a new action now. Scroll down once again to our level complete text. Now we want to tween the Y position. The tween identifier is created by us. We're just going to call it level complete. The to Y position is going to be, we'll use 40. Easing, if you type in the first quote and then start typing bounce, we want this bounce past. Duration will be 700 milliseconds, and we do not want to destroy when the tween finishes. Click OK on that. One more thing that we want to do is make sure that we allow time for our animation to complete. So let's add a scene timer. We'll just call it level complete timer. Click OK on that. And now for this condition, we want the scene timer again. This time we want value of a scene timer. The timer's name is that level complete timer. Greater than equal to, this is going to be personal preference, but I'm going to start with 4 seconds just to allow everything time to complete before we go to level 2. And we need a trigger once here, and may as well put one there as well. So let's go ahead and test this. You can see that we have a perfectly centered object, though we do want to bring it down some. We're going to bring that down to about 75. Let's see what that looks like. I think that looks nice. Let's head back to the Scene tab. Click on Add a New Object, Sprite, add an animation, add a sprite from the Asset Store, and we're going to type in Ninja Frog Fall. And we're going to add that to the scene. Click Edit with Pascal. We're going to resize this to 256. Make sure that Maintain Aspect Ratio and Resize to Canvas are both checked, then click Resize. Click Save. That'll overwrite that original image, and now we can rename this as Ninja Frog Splash, and copy that in your clipboard and just make that the object name as well. Click on the Behaviors tab, add a behavior, start typing the word tween, click tween, and apply. Now let's head back to the Events tab, still in the Checkpoint Flag section. I'm going to move this timer up one level so that as soon as the opacity starts, the timer will start as well. Let's add a new action here. Scroll down till we get to our Ninja Frog Splash. We want to create an object, and the X position will be level 01. This is our tile map, if you recall. The width of that divided by 2 minus 128, which is half of our object size. For the Y position, I'm going to start relatively low because I want the tween to be offset, and I want to put this on the fade layer. Click OK on that. Next, I want to add a new action. Same thing for the Ninja Frog Splash, and we're going to tween the Y position. The tween identifier will be Ninja Frog Splash. The 2Y is going to be 100. We'll see what that looks like. Easing, let's start typing the quote and then bounce. We still want the bounce past. And duration, we want it to be offset from our previous bounce text, so I'm going to go with 900 milliseconds. We don't want to destroy the object when the tween finishes. Click OK. Let's see what that looks like. My test number for fruit on the scene is still 19. Click preview on that. I like it. So that's exactly what I wanted it to be. I'm going to change my testing back to fruit on the scene is 1 and save your project. Next, we're going to add some music to our game. I had created this song Rabble for level 1 of our game. Just come here and click the song to download. I will include a link to the URL in the description below. We can minimize this and head back over to gDevelop. Back in gDevelop, let's go to the Events tab, click Player, and then we're going to come up here and add a new group, call it Music. Now we'll add a new event, and we'll make sure that that event is nested. We want at the beginning of the scene, so we can copy this one and paste it down here, or you can navigate and add it manually. Let's go ahead and add an action, and the action that we want is to play a music file. And I want the second one, play a music file on the channel. Choose the file, navigate to where you downloaded your music, double click to bring it in, and click OK. The channel identifier is going to be 1. And we do want to loop the music. We want to default to 100. We'll come back to that in a bit, and we want the pitch speed to be 1. That'll play the music as it was intended. So now when we preview our game, we can see that the music is playing. We also want to come down here to the checkpoint flag, and when the player is in collision with the flag, let's go ahead and stop that music. And stop music on the channel is what we want. And that channel was 1. So I'm going to bring this up just so it's above the timer. And now I'm going to set this to 19 just for quick testing. And when I preview, when I touch the flag, the music should stop, and it does. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to set that back to 1 so I don't forget, and save my project. Next, we're going to add a sound for when our player is in collision with the fruit. Let's scroll down to the fruit section. When the Ninja Frog is in collision with the fruit, let's add an action to play a sound. And we want to select the second one, play a sound on the channel. Let's go ahead and add our file. We want this Apple Munch bubble, which is a combination of 2 sounds from Pixabay. I will include a link to the URLs in the description below. Channel identifier, I'm going to use 2 here. We don't want to repeat the sound. Volume, I'm going to do a random in range, and I want to use from 60 to 100. Pitch speed, I'm going to set this at 2.5 because it sounds better in the game. Click OK on that. And we do need a trigger once here, so just copy any from the scene or navigate to add that. Let's go ahead and test that. All right, that sounds pretty good. Next, we're going to add sound for when our player is in collision with any danger, including the angry pig. Let's scroll down to the player collision section, add an action, select play a sound. We want play a sound on the channel. Click on choose a file, navigate to where you saved the player hit file. The channel identifier is still going to be 2, the volume is going to be 100, and the pitch is going to be 1. We do not want to repeat this sound. Click OK on that. Let's go ahead and copy this line. We can paste that down here, and then let's drag that up. So we'll play the sound right after the particles are created. We'll do the same thing up here. So we don't actually need this line for when the players hit because we have the user going back to the starting point. So I'm going to take that line out. And these two should match. So let's go ahead and test that. So now when our player takes damage, yep, we got our sound playing. Perfect. Now that these two sections are completely identical, we can use an OR and an AND statement to collapse both of these events into a single event, improving our game efficiency as well as debugging when we have to make changes to this section. Initially, I was going to do more with one or the other, and now I'm going to leave it as if the Ninja Frog is in collision with danger or angry pig. So let's go ahead and add that OR statement. Click here to add a condition, type in OR, bring that OR statement in, and drag this first condition down. Next, because I want to make sure that the next two lines are both met, we want an AND condition. Click OK on that. So now if all of these conditions are true, and we want the angry pig collision as well as the Ninja Frog being on the floor, both of those must be met, then we can test this before doing a lot of work and having to recreate it. Let's just comment out that line and make sure that it still works. So if I hit danger there, it works as expected, and now if the angry pig charges, it also works as expected. That said, we can go ahead and delete this entire line, cleaning up our code and making it a lot easier to work with. We're right around the 30-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one here. We covered a lot of advanced features this time, including building out a very cool splash screen when the player completes a level, as well as optimizing and removing code redundancy where possible. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe. It lets me know how I'm doing and it supports my channel. You can also leave me a comment below. Let me know if this segment helped you and what you may wish to see in future segments. I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you next time.